When the Olympic Games begin in Paris on the 26th of July 2024, there'll be 130 million displaced people in the world. Representing those people will be the 36 members of the Olympic Refugee Team, selected from 74 IOC refugee scholarship holders residing in more than 20 countries around the world. These are the reactions of the members of the team as their names were read out by the IOC President Thomas Bach earlier this week. They originate from 11 different countries, such as Venezuela, Cuba, Eritrea, and Sudan. They'll be competing in 11 different sports, from swimming to athletics to boxing, taekwondo, breaking, and more. Jojo Ferris is the head of the Olympic Refuge Foundation. She told a press conference after the naming of the team why this Olympic refugee team is so important.
I mean, if 1 in 60 people around the globe have been forcibly displaced from their homes, the Olympic Games provides a platform to bring the attention to this issue. And not just the athletes as ambassadors themselves of this issue, but the team as a whole, being able to change that rhetoric or negative sentiment towards refugees is really important. And it shines that light or brings attention onto the broader work that we're doing, using sport as a tool to, as Pur said, create belonging, improve mental health, inclusion of societies. And so it is a really important time that the team is able to get that attention. And thanks to all of you for your interest, and hopefully you'll help us get that message through.
The chef de mission of the Olympic Refugee Team in Paris will be former cyclist Masuma Alizada. Originally from Afghanistan, she was forced to flee her country and became a member of the Olympic Refugee Team in Tokyo 2020. When the names of the current athletes were being read out, I noticed tears in the eyes of Masuma. I asked her why.
Yeah, I remember myself when they announced my name that I will compete in Tokyo. Yeah, I was so much emotional. I realized that every dream is possible, even with all the challenges and the difficulties that I had in Afghanistan. First, I forced to flee my country when I had 1 year in Iran, and then I returned to Afghanistan. Afghanistan, we had a lot of difficulties, women's rights, security problems. And then I forced to flee again for the second time to come in France. And France, as a refugee, it's not easy at all. Too much difficulty, like papers and to integrate a new society, system of life. Everything is totally different. So beside of that, I continue to dream Olympic Games. And finally, I heard that Mr. President announced my name, and I just thought about all the difficulties that I had, but now today is the result of my hard working. And yeah, when I saw that some of athletes was emotional, I remember myself, and I know how much is important for them to be selected for the Olympic Games and to realize their dream. And I'm sure that they worked a lot to arriving up to the Olympic Games.
Sitting alongside Masuma at the press conference was Per Biel, himself a track and field athlete, a member of the original IOC refugee team back in Rio 2016. In 2022, he became an IOC member and sits on the board of the Olympic Refuge Foundation. I asked him whether he hoped that in the minds of the rest of the world, the idea of who and what refugees are will be forever changed because of this team in Paris.
I will just add briefly, what I need people to understand, is the concept of refugees, because I believe not everyone understands that concept. Because when you hear about a refugee, people think these are violent people, these are people coming from war-torn area, but that is not the case. Every individual have their own case, their own story. But now the good interesting is, these people, they find home through sport, which is something that everyone need to understand. They have to follow individual athlete who is competing to understand why have they been forced to flee from their country? What could be the impact for their life? And what could the world change? Because if all of us understand the situation of refugee and put ourselves in their shoe, I think it will be a better way for us to understand the situation that is coming up. Because in 2016, I told people, today it's me, tomorrow will be another person. Now we are in 2024. What is happening now, we don't know what will happen in 2025. So this is a time that we need everyone to understand what is the concept of refugee, and all those athletes who are competing to understand their story for the better of understanding the concept of refugees.
In Paris, I hope to follow the ups and downs of the Olympic Refugee Team, so you get to know their stories as well as you know the stories of the athletes from your own country, no matter where you live. Because the refugee team is just like us, except that through an accident of birth, they've been forced to flee their countries through violence and conflict. I'm Tracy Holmes. If you'd like more stories that go behind the scenes of sports news, please feel free to follow my podcast, The Sports Ambassador. See you next time.